I'm Michael, and this is Investor Voice. Porsche isn't just a car company. Behind the badge, there's a wild, almost unbelievable story, full of highs, lows, genius, and some truly dark moments. Imagine a poor kid who grows up to be one of the world's greatest engineers, changing the way we think about cars forever. But there's also a side of the story people would rather forget. A partnership with one of history's worst villains, a connection that ended in prison, forced labor, and in the end, the founder's death. Today, the name Porsche means luxury, speed, and design that turns heads. Collectors chase these cars, and enthusiasts drive them for the pure thrill. The Porsche 911, it's legendary. Everybody recognizes it, and it always lands near the top of any greatest sports car list. But really, how did a tiny German engineering firm pull off such a transformation? And how did its founder, a man obsessed with building machines, end up tangled with the Nazis, losing his freedom and his life because of it? I'm Michael, and this is Investor Voice. Get ready, because we're about to dig into the real, sometimes troubling history of Porsche. Let's rewind to September 1875 in a little village called Maffersdorf, back then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, now in the Czech Republic. Ferdinand Porsche entered a world where most people still got around by horse and carriage. Trains were considered cutting edge, and bicycles were just starting to catch on. The very first cars were nothing more than oddities, sputtering to life in hidden workshops. Ordinary folks had never laid eyes on one. Ferdinand's dad worked as a blacksmith. It was tough, honest work, and the plan was simple. Ferdinand would take over someday. So, from early on, he learned the trade, heating metal, hammering it into shape. But his heart just wasn't in it. He was always daydreaming, more interested in figuring out how things ticked than fixing horseshoes. Instead of pounding iron, he wanted to learn, hoping school could open another door. Then tragedy hit. At 14, Ferdinand lost his older brother. Suddenly, he was the oldest son, and that meant all the family's hopes and the family business landed on his shoulders. School had to wait. He dropped out and went to work full-time in the workshop. Those years were hard, frustrating, endless days at the forge, doing a job he never wanted. But even then, something kept him going: electricity. In the late 1800s, most people still used candles or gas lamps, but electric lights were starting to show up, glowing with promise. To Ferdinand, electricity was pure magic. He was hooked. He'd spend hours in the attic, tinkering with wires and batteries, trying to figure out this invisible force. Of course, his dad thought it was a waste of time, a distraction from real work. He kept telling Ferdinand to quit fooling around. But Ferdinand wouldn't stop. His obsession was clear, and finally, his father gave in. He sent Ferdinand to the Imperial Technical School in Reichenberg to study engineering. That changed everything. Almost right away, Ferdinand's talent exploded. Within months, he'd built his own electric generator and wired the family home with electric lights, years before anyone else in the village had them. Suddenly, even his father couldn't deny his gift. He let Ferdinand choose his own path. Nobody had any idea just how far that path would lead, straight into the birth of a whole new industry. By 1893, when Ferdinand was 18, he left home and landed his first real job at Bela Egger and Company, a company making electrical equipment in Vienna. He started out on the shop floor, but his skills stood out right away. People noticed. He moved up fast, soon running major projects. While working at Bela Egger, Ferdinand built their first electric wheel hub motor. This was a huge leap forward, an electric motor that fit right into a wheel, powering it. Bicycles came first, but Ferdinand looked past them. Cars showed up, engineers got hooked, and Porsche landed at Lohner and Company. He was only 23 in 1898 when he built the Porsche P1, an electric car with a wooden frame. It could go 50 miles on a charge and hit 21 miles per hour. Most people shrugged off cars as rich kids' toys. Porsche didn't buy that. By 1900, he threw a gas engine into the mix to run a generator for electric motors. That was the first gasoline-electric hybrid, the Lohner Porsche Electromobile. It could reach 36 miles per hour, though the batteries held it back. Daimler brought him on as chief designer. By 1910, his cars dominated the Prince Henry trial. Then the world changed. War broke out. Porsche switched gears and started designing engines for planes, airships, even artillery. After the war, he dove back into racing. The Sasha car racked up 43 wins out of 53 races. By 1923, Porsche moved to Stuttgart to become technical director at Daimler. A new era was about to start. At Daimler-Benz, Porsche dreamed up and built the luxurious Mercedes-Benz S-Series, cars that pretty much set the stage for the modern sports car, both fast on the track and stylish on the road. In 1928, he unveiled a legend, the Mercedes-Benz SSK. The name stood for Super Sport Kurz, or Super Sport Short, and it was a monster. With a 7.1-liter six-cylinder engine pushing out anywhere from 200 to 300 horsepower, the slowest SSK could hit 190 kilometers an hour. The top versions, an eye-watering 235 kilometers per hour. This Mercedes-Benz wasn't just a race car, it was unbeatable. In 1929, it dominated the 500 miles of Argentina, then racked up wins at the Cordoba Grand Prix in both 1929 and 1930, and kept going with a victory at the Irish Grand Prix. The streak didn't slow down. By 1931, it had taken first place at the Mille Miglia too. Back then, nothing else came close. It was the fastest, the best, and the most valuable sports car you could buy. Porsche built the SSK Trossi Roadster and locked in his place in history. But things got messy at Daimler-Benz. He wanted to push boundaries, while the board just wanted to play it safe. That clash sent him packing to Steyr. Then the Great Depression slammed the brakes on everything. Steyr went under. Suddenly, Porsche was out of a job in his mid-50s, probably for the first time in his life. But he didn't just sit there feeling sorry for himself. He started his own company. In 1931, Porsche GmbH opened up in Stuttgart. He brought back some of his old crew, including his son Ferry. At first, they only offered engineering consulting, no actual cars, not yet. The economy was wrecked. Days went by with barely any calls. Then, out of nowhere, a letter landed on his desk. In 1933, Hitler took over as chancellor and wanted a people's car, a Volkswagen. He gathered the country's best engineers, spelled out exactly what he wanted: a family car, cheap to run, under 990 Reichsmarks. Most people thought it was a joke. Not Porsche. He dove right in and landed the project. By 1934, Porsche and his team got to work on what would become the Volkswagen Beetle. Air-cooled engine in the back, easy to maintain, great traction, and it squeezed out over 31 miles per gallon. Pure engineering brilliance. When orders for the Beetle started rolling in, it was the highlight of Porsche's career. 300,000 people wanted one. He was about to watch his dream hit the streets. But before the first Beetle rolled off the line, history took a turn. As the new Volkswagen factory was getting ready for mass production, Hitler invaded Poland in September 1939. Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun. Overnight, Beetle production stopped. The factory switched to building war machines. Porsche's greatest creation was put on hold, and his life was about to change in ways he never imagined. Ferdinand Porsche found himself in a mess he couldn't escape. He was one of Germany's top engineers and had a close working relationship with Hitler, so he got pulled right into military work for the Nazis. He started building off-road vehicles for the army, things like the Kubelwagen, based on the Beetle, and the Schwimmwagen, which could drive straight from land into water. He worked on giant projects too, like the Elephant tank destroyer, and even had a hand in the V-1 flying bomb. But even though Hitler liked him, Porsche didn't always deliver what the regime wanted. When Hitler decided to hold a contest for the new Tiger tank design, Porsche put forward a wild idea: a huge hybrid tank, the Ferdinand, with a gasoline-electric transmission. It was bold and different, but way too complicated. The drive system kept breaking down during testing. In the end, he lost the contract to Henschel and Son. Here's the thing: Porsche had so much faith in his idea that he'd already built 100 chassis for his tank. Rather than just scrapping them, the Germans repurposed 90 of these into heavy tank destroyers, now called Elephants. On paper, they were terrifying weapons, but the same mechanical headaches stuck around. Most of these tanks didn't fall to enemy fire. They broke down, forcing crews to abandon them. This is also where the story takes a dark turn. There's no getting around it. The Porsche company used forced labor during the war. For years, the company glossed over this, insisting they were just a small office back then. But survivors came forward, telling stories of being captured and forced to work in Porsche's factories in Stuttgart. They worked alongside other prisoners of war and concentration camp inmates, unpaid, barely fed, and often worked to death. Eventually, after all this came to light, Porsche paid millions into compensation funds for the victims. Back then, a lot of German factories used forced labor. But just because everyone did it doesn't mean it was right. Porsche profited directly from people's suffering. Now, who was Ferdinand Porsche really? Most people say he wasn't a true Nazi. He didn't bother with the Hitler salute, and his scruffy gray coat always stood out among all those brown uniforms. He ignored the SS rank they gave him and cared far more about engineering than politics. He saw the Nazis as a way to build his business, get funding, and solve tough technical problems. He did what the regime wanted without thinking about how cruel the system was. And it paid off. The company's profit went from 3,000 Reichsmarks in 1934 to more than 2 million a decade later. After the war, in 1945, the consequences caught up with him. The French arrested Porsche and charged him with war crimes because of his SS ties and close work with Hitler. He ended up in prison, locked away in miserable conditions. With Ferdinand behind bars, it was up to his son, Ferry Porsche, to keep the family name alive and steer the company towards something better. Ferry had inherited his dad's knack for machines. He'd already built a few vehicles like the Schwimmwagen, which German soldiers relied on during the war. That got him arrested too. He spent several months in jail, and the only reason the French let him go was so he could scrape together the money to bail his father out. Ferry managed it by signing a deal with Italian car maker Cisitalia. He designed the Cisitalia 360, an incredibly advanced race car. The project never actually made it to the racetrack because the company ran out of money and the racing rules changed. But Ferry got his payment up front. It was enough. After 22 months, he finally got his father out of prison. But the damage was done. The way the French had treated Ferdinand ruined his health. He never really bounced back. With his father out of commission, everything fell on Ferry. He was the one who had to pick up where his dad left off and keep the Porsche name alive. Ferry remembered how Cisitalia, the Italian company he'd worked for, was building little sports cars with Fiat engines. He had this straightforward idea. Why not do the same thing, but with Volkswagen parts? So he reached out to the head of Volkswagen and made a deal. He got permission to use their parts for his cars, and maybe even more important, he could tap into Volkswagen's entire sales network. On top of that, Ferry brought the paperwork proving that his father had designed the Beetle before the war. That sealed the deal. Volkswagen agreed to pay Porsche a licensing fee for every Beetle they produced. This whole episode showed that Ferry wasn't just some engineer tinkering in a workshop. He had a sharp business sense too. Those deals gave Porsche enough cash to finally start building their own cars. In 1948, Ferry rolled out the first car to wear the Porsche badge, the 356. It was a small, elegant two-door roadster powered by a Volkswagen air-cooled engine. Top speed, 87 miles an hour. It wasn't the fastest or the most powerful car on the road, but it was light, well-balanced, and honestly, just fun to drive. The car had character. Ferry took it racing in Innsbruck that year, and it won its class. That first win kicked off Porsche's long love affair with motorsports. At first, hardly anyone noticed the 356. Sales trickled in, but car lovers adored it. One of its biggest fans was Ferry's dad. Ferdinand Porsche was incredibly proud of his son. He got to see the car's debut and cheered it on. In 1950, he visited the Volkswagen factory for the last time, watching his beloved Beetle roll off the line by the thousands. He didn't have much time left to enjoy it, though. He died in 1951 at 75. Not long after Ferdinand passed, everything changed. The 356 started selling like crazy. It racked up wins, including a class victory at Le Mans. New versions like the Speedster and the Carrera drew in sports car fans and celebrities alike. But even with all that success, the 356 was still basically a fancier Beetle at heart. The design was starting to feel stale, and customers wanted something new. Porsche needed to invent a fresh car, one that still looked like a Porsche, but felt completely different. That's when the next generation stepped up. Ferry's son, Ferdinand Alexander, everyone called him Butzi, took the reins. Like his father and grandfather, Butzi was obsessed with cars. But he wasn't just an engineer, he was an artist with metal. He learned the ropes in Porsche's body design department, and then he got to work on the new project. The result hit the road in 1964, the Porsche 911. No exaggeration, it became one of the most famous sports cars ever. The 911 packed way more power than the old 356, swapping out the four-cylinder for a brand new six-cylinder boxer engine. It kept the rear engine air-cooled setup, which made it handle like nothing else. With all that weight over the back wheels, it could launch hard and stick to the road. The whole package just felt alive, smooth, sharp, and ridiculously fun to drive. And unlike a lot of sports cars, the 911 was tough. Over 70% of all 911s ever built are still out there, still running. The 911 took off. It became Porsche's top seller. They kept tweaking it, making it faster and more powerful. Models like the Carrera S and the Turbo pushed things even further. By the 1970s, they were selling more than 20,000 a year. The 911 also made a name for itself in racing. Its first big outing was the Monte Carlo Rally in 1965, where it finished fifth. Not bad, but it only got better. Porsche won 3 Monte Carlo rallies in a row from 1968 to 1970. The 911 racked up victories at the Targa Florio, Paris-Dakar, Daytona, and a ton of other events, becoming one of the most successful race cars ever built. Around this time, Ferdinand Porsche stepped down. None of his sons wanted to take over, so the family had to make a tough call. They split up the company's shares and let outside managers take charge. From that point on, the Porsche family wasn't running things day to day anymore. Even with these changes, Porsche kept pushing forward, still building incredible sports cars, always chasing that next level of speed and precision. But good times don't last forever. Trouble was brewing, and the company was about to face a challenge that would force them to rethink everything. In 1986, a sharp drop in the dollar and the high cost of their top-notch engineering hit hard. By 1991, sales had fallen to just 23,000 cars, a massive drop from what they'd sold 5 years earlier. The losses piled up. By the end of 1993, Porsche was barely hanging on, moving only around 14,000 cars a year. They were staring down bankruptcy. They needed a way out. So they did something nobody expected. They decided to build an SUV. Back in the late 90s, SUVs were exploding in popularity, especially in the US. For Porsche, famous for sleek, high-performance sports cars, making a family SUV felt like heresy to a lot of die-hard fans. 4 doors and a hatchback on a Porsche? It was unheard of. But Porsche didn't back down. In 2002, they launched the Cayenne. Almost overnight, it became a runaway success, their best-selling model and a favorite with customers. Sure, it looked different, but it still drove like a Porsche, fast, sharp, reliable. Plus, it had the comfort and space people wanted. The Cayenne gave the company exactly what it needed, right when it needed it. That SUV saved Porsche. These days, the Cayenne and the smaller Macan make up more than 70% of Porsche's sales in America. People still say they're the sportiest SUVs you can buy. And Porsche didn't forget its roots. Models like the 4-door Panamera and the all-electric Taycan are still among the top-selling sports cars out there. Now, Porsche is part of the Volkswagen Group, but the brand is as iconic as ever. This is a story of brilliance and tough choices, risk and reinvention, a family obsessed with cars, and a company that faced down its own darkest moments to become a legend. I'm Michael, and you've been watching Investor Voice. If you like this dive into Porsche's wild history, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Make sure you subscribe to Investor Voice and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. And hey, share this with anyone who loves cars, history, or just a good story. Porsche's journey proves that greatness often comes from people wrestling with their flaws and from the hardest situations. The real question isn't whether we'll face tough moral choices, it's how we remember them and what we take away. Until next time, stay curious, learn from the past, and keep your investments sharp. See you in the next one.